WrestleMania, the WWE's highest grossing event, is coming back to Las Vegas in a couple of weeks. And this year, they're aiming for a record number of women's matches. So today on CityCast Las Vegas, we talk with Lo, the founder of a female-centric wrestling podcast and merch brand, Wrestling Winedown. And she tells us how women are transforming the world of wrestling. It's Monday, March 30th. I'm Sonia Cho Swanson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Lo, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, I gotta know, because we have a wrestling fan on our team, Rob, our newsletter editor, and he was like, oh, WrestleMania is coming back, but it's like controversial. Can you explain?
Sure. So WrestleMania was announced by The Rock last year as being in New Orleans.
Okay.
And everyone was really excited to go back to New Orleans. WWE has been there before for 2 WrestleManias, actually. So we were all excited.
Mm-hmm.
And then, come to find out, Las Vegas bid a bit higher than New Orleans. So they kind of snatched away WrestleMania. And that's why it is here for the second year in a row. And some people are not happy about it, like your newsletter editor said. But some people are excited, like myself, because now I don't have to travel. I can go back to my bed at the end of the night.
Okay, so people in Las Vegas are happy. People in New Orleans are a little mad. They're a little upset at us.
But
okay.
they did get almost like a I'm sorry gift. They are getting Money in the Bank, which is another pay-per-view this year. And that will be happening in September.
Okay, so they didn't get nothing out of this. So good for New Orleans.
Yes.
But it is coming back to Vegas, and now tickets are on sale. And the other thing I heard is that ticket prices are kind of spiraling out of control. It's getting more and more expensive, right?
WWE is doing their best to drop the ticket prices now. I've seen a lot of 15, 20, 30% off sales. But yes, they were extremely high when they first went on sale in the first couple months after. But I think they are starting to come to their senses about where their fan base's wallets are.
Yeah. Well, the country's wallets. I mean, everyone's a little bit.
Right.
Tightening the belts a little bit this year. So yeah, feeling that. The other thing that I read about WrestleMania this year is that women are taking more of the center stage than ever, which is fascinating to me. Why is that happening?
WWE has some amazing competitors, obviously in the male field, but the females have also been at the top of their game. You look at the wide range of rosters that WWE has, which includes WWE Raw, WWE SmackDown, and WWE NXT. You have people from the likes of Rhea Ripley, who is now a household name, in my opinion, to Jade Cargill. You have the returning Bella Twins, who have built their whole empire outside of wrestling the last couple years and decided that they want to come back and do one last run as a tag team. And then you have some other superstars who are in there, such as Charlotte Flair, Bayley, who have been around, have gone through the system, and have just created a name for themselves in professional wrestling. I think the women, in my opinion, are at the top of their game. I love watching women's wrestling more than men's wrestling because...
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why?
Because the gear, their theme songs, their personalities, the way that they present themselves, like, it is just so exciting to see. When I first started watching wrestling when I was younger, there was really one type of woman that they would hire. And now it is such a wide range of women in different shapes, sizes, ethnicities, backgrounds. Like, it is just so exciting to be a wrestling fan, but especially a women's wrestling fan.
Okay, let's go into that too, because I remember seeing like clips of videos or, your surfing channels at like, the motel or whatever you come across wrestling back in the 90s. And it was like, the women were kind of like trotted out as like side pieces, right? They're like sideshows. I mean, they're just like doing like pillow fights. They're wearing like little bikinis. Like, they're not really there in their own right as athletes.
Right.
But it's different now. Can you explain, how did that change? Like, when did you start seeing that change and how did that change come about?
So this change came about in, I would say, around 2013 to 2016.
Okay,
I remember,
pretty recent. That's pretty recent.
So the WWE women female superstars used to be called WWE divas. And that was in the era that you probably saw them, where it was a lot of sexualization. They were having pillow fights. They were managers. They weren't really wrestling. There were some that you had in there, such as Trish Stratus and Lita, who tried to break that glass ceiling that the women had at the time. And they obviously did a great job. They paved the way for the superstars that we see now. But the women still were not treated as the men. So, like I said, in 2013 to 2015, this hashtag Give WWE Divas a Chance really kicked off, and it started the WWE.
Give WWE Divas a Chance? Is
Yes,
that
and
the hashtag?
Yeah, it was trending on Twitter, and it got a lot of traction, and then it led to the women's revolution. So we saw a lot of people like the Bella Twins, Paige, and a couple others who really were in that ring. They were wrestling. They were more focused on their wrestling skills rather than the sexualization that had occurred in WWE for many years. And from there, I feel like it took off with other women starting their professional wrestling career, like I said, such as a Charlotte Flair, a Bayley, a Sasha Banks, who either like Charlotte Flair, her father is Ric Flair, so she had that,
legacy.
She had that edge to her, right? But then you had other people like a Bayley or Sasha Banks who had wrestled in the independent scene, but just got to WWE to make a bigger name for themselves. So WWE still continues to recruit from the independents, which I think is amazing because there's a lot of independent wrestlers who are just grinding away and they have really good matches. They're still signing those, but they're also signing individuals who happen to be college athletes. They have an NIL program where they'll get somebody who was a women's basketball player or like a volleyball player or a gymnast, and they've actually succeeded in WWE.
Really?
Two that I can think. Yes, two that I can think of off the top of my head are the current half of the current WWE Women's Tag Team Champion, Lash Legend, who was a basketball player before she became a WWE superstar, and former WWE SmackDown Women's Champion, Tiffany Stratton, who was a gymnast before she was a wrestler.
This is fascinating because I feel like in the last few years, we've seen the explosive growth of women's sports, an audience for women's sports broadly, right? Whether it's women's basketball or women's hockey, like we talk about the U.S. women's hockey team, killing at the Olympics. But it feels like women's wrestling was kind of at the leading edge of this, even before the pandemic, it sounds like, right? Like sort of 2016 and beyond.
Yeah, I think wrestling is this such interesting sport because you think about the 90s and it was so mainstream, right? Like you knew who Stone Cold Steve Austin was. You knew who The Rock was. And I think in that late...
Can I just say, audience, Lo is wearing a John Cena t-shirt with his giant face emblazoned right in the middle of it. It's amazing.
Yes, John Cena is my goat. But you think about these household names and usually people who are, fans, they don't think of women, right? And I feel like that has done a 180 now. When I ask people about wrestling, or I have people that, I'll talk to that aren't wrestling fans, they'll be like, oh, I saw this girl on my timeline. Do you know who Rhea Ripley is? And it shows that these women can be household names, just like a John Cena, just like a Rock. And the thing about wrestling is, like I said, it was mainstream in the 90s. And I feel like in the late 2000s, it was kind of falling off a little bit. And I feel like now with the incorporation of WWE Raw on Netflix, they've moved networks a couple times with their other shows. There are more eyes on the product, and they've been able to incorporate a lot of celebrities, a lot of partnerships. They work with Complex a lot. They've worked with Travis Scott. They've worked with, they've had Cardi B host SummerSlam at one point. So they've been able to intertwine that pop culture that a lot of people know and ingest it into the wrestling world. And I feel like that brings more eyes and puts it back to kind of where it was in the 90s. And if I may say, I think it's bigger than it was in the 90s at this point.
Closing out the UNLV Performing Arts Center's 49th season is a performance by the New York Philharmonic String Quartet. The quartet debuted with John Adams' Absolute Jest in New York City in 2017, and it comprises the 4 principal musicians from the orchestra. All 4 of its members are prize-winning soloists and have performed around the world. Concertmaster Frank Huang, Principal Second Violin Chan Lee, Principal Viola Cynthia Phelps, and Principal Cello Carter Bray. So with their powers combined, it's going to be an amazing performance. The evening's program includes Felix Mendelssohn's String Quartet No. 3 and Franz Schubert's String Quartet No. 15 and Kvardazats. That's Monday, March 30th at 7:30 p.m. at Artemis W. Ham Concert Hall. Get your tickets at pac.unlv.edu.
Hi, CityCast listeners. This is David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, but I also have another job. I'm one of the hosts of the Political Gabfest, Slate's politics podcast. Every week, I get on mic with my co-hosts Emily Bazelon and John Dickerson, and we talk about politics and a lot more about other things that we care about. The Gabfest has been going for more than 20 years because the three of us love talking to each other, and we have an amazing community of listeners. If you like the open-hearted, curious way CityCast approaches cities, I think you'll like the Political Gabfest too. Stream it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
Well, let's get into your project, a wrestling wind down, because when I heard about this, I was like, wait, wrestling and wine? Like, please explain. How do these things go together?
Sure. So I started the podcast with a friend when I was in college. I was about to graduate in 2019. And my friend at the time, she had stumbled across wrestling, and I was at a point where I was getting back into wrestling. And I was on Twitter and saw that she was talking about Monday Night Raw. And I said, wait, you like wrestling? And we would talk about it here and there. And this was around the time where like Call Her Daddy was coming out. So my friend was listening to
is a huge hit podcast, two women chatting. Like,
yes,
amazing
very
podcast.
Girl talk, girly pop talk. Yes. So my friend was listening to Call Her Daddy. She was listening to other podcasts, and she was like, what if we did a podcast? And I was like, sure. I had done college radio. I knew what it was to like produce and edit and all of that. So we were going to go into wrestling because we took a look at the sphere of what the current wrestling media looked like, and it was predominantly men. And we said, okay, we want to be a voice, a female voice in this community. So as the two journalists / PR people, of course, we started planning way in advance of how we wanted to present ourselves for this brand. I actually came up with the name. Wrestling obviously is in there, but SmackDown, wine. My friend liked beer, and I was like, I'm not a beer drinker, so I don't know if I could get with that. But what about wine down? And we did all of our marketing. We got our logo made by one of my friends, Joy Lynn, and from there, we just got everything together, and we started in April of 2019 with our first 3 episodes. And we did that for about a year, and then my friend relocated, and she decided to leave the show, and I took it upon myself to just have a one-woman band over here. So I was still doing the podcast, and then a couple years later, around 2022, 2023, I decided to dip into the merchandise side of things. Being a longtime wrestling fan, I see the merchandise that's presented by the mainstream companies, and it's not for women. It's not. And I was like, okay, I like pink and
You mean
purple.
like in terms of like the sizing of it, the shape of it, the appeal of it?
All of the above.
Okay.
So top of 2023 is when I really dived in and started making the girlier designs. And we've been doing that since. It's been 3 years of making merch, and I've absolutely loved it. I've been able to see women all over the world wear merchandise to WWE events, AEW events, independent events, and, conventions. And I'm just so thankful every time I see somebody in a shirt. It means so much because, like I said, that representation for women in wrestling is so important because there's a lot of women wrestling fans and they deserve to have merchandise that make them feel confident that they can style properly with the clothes that they already have. And that's versatile. I find that in some of the men's designs, it's a lot of stuff you can't wear outside of a wrestling event.
Oh, really?
What do
you mean? Like how so?
Some of the slogans that are put on there, like if you were to wear it out, like in the street, somebody might question you a little bit. Like just very random, generic stuff. A little
like too insidery joke, or a little bit too like kind of like out there, saucy, spicy.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
So it's almost like if you know type of thing. If you see another wrestling fan, they might laugh. But if you see someone else who has never watched professional wrestling, they'd
be like, oh, gasp, shock.
Yes.
Okay.
So with my stuff, what I've really dived into is pop culture. So Megan Thee Stallion has been an inspiration for me in making merch. I have some
Can
Little
you give
Mermaid.
an example?
Yes. I have real wrestling fan on one of my shirts. I've also dived into the Hot Girls. So Hot Girls Watch Wrestling, Hot Girls 4, and then you can insert a wrestler's name. I've also done a Little Mermaid inspired design, but Daddy, I love wrestling. So those are just some of the ones that we have. I know what the women like, really watch my timeline, and I see some of the interests that people have who buy our stuff. And I think about what I would wear, but I also think about their interests and what they would want to see as well.
So I'm kind of curious because you talked about like women really becoming like a bigger part of the wrestling world. Can you tell me a little bit more about how the audience for professional wrestling is changing?
Yeah, it is still male dominated, but I feel like from someone who goes to events and someone who is online on Instagram and on Twitter for business purposes, I've noticed that there are more women who are present in the community who are loud and proud about liking wrestling.
Hmm.
I remember when I was younger and I had first started watching wrestling as, 9, 10, 11, 12, like I was not telling anybody at school that I liked wrestling because I thought it was like a boy sport.
Yeah.
And nowadays you see women that are in their late 20s, early 30s, all ages, who are just so proud to say, I love professional wrestling. I don't care if you think it's fake. I don't care if you think you know more than me. I'm educated and I love this sport and I'm going to continue watching it. I'm going to continue going to the shows. I'm going to continue wearing merch. Like, I think the women are more proud to be in the community now. And I feel like they are just proud to have that in their back pocket of, hey, I like professional wrestling. I know it. I'm knowledgeable. And this is what I love.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder too if that's a reflection of maybe how the sport itself is changing, right? It's easier to be proud of the sport when it's not just women like in thongs being a sideshow. It's like actual women being athletes, right? It's a little easier to say like I love this sport because of who I see on the stage and what they're doing on the stage.
Right. And too, I think that the women who watch are very opinionated. And if they don't like the position that the women are put in, whether it's a storyline or maybe the matches are too short or whatever the case may be, they are not holding back when it comes to sharing their opinions online.
Hmm.
And these wrestling companies, whether they want to admit it or not, they are watching the timeline just like every other business owner because they want to know what their fans like and what their fans dislike. So if you have a storyline where a majority of your female fans are not liking it for whatever reason, you're more than likely going to see that feedback if you get on Twitter or you get on Instagram.
Can you give me an example of like maybe a story? Because I think people know that like WWE is really based on these like elaborate characters, the villain, the hero, these storylines. Can you give us an example of a recent storyline that was very controversial where the women were like, it was a major backlash for the women against the storyline?
Yeah, there's a current storyline going into WrestleMania with Jade Cargill, who is the current WWE SmackDown Women's Champion, and Rhea Ripley, like I had mentioned earlier. Rhea Ripley was able to get her opportunity to challenge Jade at Elimination Chamber. And since then, it has turned into a lot of back and forth on Twitter. You have other wrestlers that have gotten involved. And it's become
so they bring
the
storylines online where it's like the rivalries come online too.
Yes. And it's become a thing of, is this an actual work, which a work in wrestling is, are they working? Like, is this just the storyline that they're portraying, or do they not actually like each other? And for the women, I found like they're kind of into the back and forth. The men don't like it. The men are very opinionated when it comes to Jade just in general. They have very strong opinions about her wrestling skills. The fact that she jumped from AEW to WWE and is now in this top spot of being a champion. But the men love Rhea Ripley. Like, I rarely see men that are not for Rhea Ripley. The women, it depends, right? It depends on where their fandom is. But that's one that I can think of that currently there are people that are very divided. I will tell you one that had a lot of people in agreement was John Cena turning heel last year in his last year of his retirement.
And when you say turning heel, you mean he became the bad guy?
Yes. So turning heel means that he became the bad guy. So him and The Rock actually became like this kind of like heel unit, so to speak. So John Cena won the title, the WWE title against Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania last year as a heel. And I was there and I was like, wow, that's crazy. I'm recording this on my phone because obviously, John Cena's the GOAT, but like would have loved to see him as a babyface, a good guy for his whole entire last year. But if you go online and you do your research and you look at who, enjoyed that time period of him being a heel, like it is very few and far between.
Okay. All right. And just to circle back to this like storyline of like maybe where women were portrayed in sort of maybe an unflattering light, or it was, in a very like stereotypical way. I did read about something back in the early 2000s called The World's Largest Love Machine. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, so there was a wrestler. His name was Viscera. He was the world's largest love machine. He would make inappropriate comments towards the ring announcer, Lillian Garcia. WWE had a lot of weird wrestlers who would do stuff like that in that time period. A lot of the female fans don't think about that time period because it's a dark period.
Okay.
I think of Val Venus as well. He was also another one who his gimmick was very sexualized. And I think of The Godfather, who he was a pimp and he would have women, he would call them hoes. He would have them come to ringside with them, and those would usually be like extras. So wrestlers or independent female wrestlers that were in the area, they would come on, and that would be what their job for the day would be, to accompany him to ringside. So we've seen, different, in my opinion, just outlandish, inappropriate storylines when it comes to women and women being put in uncomfortable positions in the WWE, WWF for many years. But I feel like at this point, thankfully, we don't have those type of storylines anymore. And I know if it did get to that, the online audience would let WWE know in a heartbeat.
Okay. So you don't think that's going to happen anymore because there would be immediate backlash?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
I feel like we are so far advanced from that now, especially since there is such a focus on women's wrestling and what women can do in the ring and what women can do on the mic, that if that type of storyline came back, it would be putting us so far back from what we've worked so hard to get to.
So, Lo, what do you think the future holds for the wrestling industry in Las Vegas specifically?
I believe that Las Vegas is going to become almost like a hub for professional wrestling. With WWE and UFC being owned by the same people, which is Endeavor now, we know that UFC loves to be in specific cities. And I think they're going to kind of replicate that with WWE and make Las Vegas one of WWE's hubs. I think obviously now having WrestleMania here twice, WrestleMania weekend, they're really testing it out to see, okay, how is this going to work? We had a huge turnout last year. Let's see what the turnout is again. And, I think from there, we'll see a little bit more of Raw and SmackDown come back into town. I don't think we're going to get a WrestleMania again anytime soon. But I think they will host some of their secondary events here, while they're on the West Coast passing through, etc.
Oh, exciting. Sounds like a lot more wrestling's coming to town. And actually, people can also see local indie wrestling in town as well. Any events that you want to shout out, Lo?
Sure. So Future Stars of Wrestling, they are the independent school out here. They do a lot of events. They do about 1 to 2 a month. I know they currently have a residency at HyperX, which is at Luxor, and then they have their arena, which is by the airport. There's some incredible talent over there. They have the center of attention, Brittany Brooks. They also have pop-ins sometimes. We'll see AEW superstar Layla Gray over there. I've seen AEW superstar Trisha Dora. You have the likes of G Sharp. You have Ice Williams, who was previously a WWE ID talent. So indie wrestling, I feel like, is so exciting because you see some of these wrestlers, you could see them years, like 3-4 years ago, and then you see them now and they're signed to an AEW or a WWE, and it just shows that being consistent, making those cities, but especially remembering where you came from, still wrestling in Las Vegas where you got your training, is what's going to build that fan base. And I love going to FSW shows. Another company that is in town is Pride Style Pro Wrestling. They are gender inclusive and they stand 10 toes down on that. So they, like I said, they are downtown and they bring in a lot of West Coast people. So the likes of Johnny Robbie, Los Suavecitos, Bryn Thorne. And then you have also people that are based here, like a G Sharp or like a Tyler Bateman. So they have a variety of wrestlers and, they do all types of matches over there. It's not just singles matches. They also have, a little bit on the hardcore side with the weapons and stuff like that. So if you're into that type of thing, that's definitely your avenue to check out. And they also have at their different shows pop-ups for different artists that are here to sell their merchandise and stuff like that. So I think it's a great opportunity for not only you to go to support the wrestling, but also the artists that are currently in Las Vegas that want to showcase their stuff and love wrestling as well.
Amazing. Well, you've opened my eyes to like a whole other side of wrestling. I mean, you just really honestly changed the stereotype of wrestling in my mind. So I know you did that for a lot of our listeners too. Thank you so much for coming on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed this show, go tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Don't forget you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.